And how is Slovenia? Because a lot of people probably watching this, listening to this, reading up about it, probably have no idea what it's like. How is it as a country? How have you adapted to a new environment? Because again, it's just you. You've gone and said, you know what, I'm going to go and pursue my dream, chase my dream, which is massive. It's not like uni where there's going to be like loads of other people that are kind of similar position to you and we've all come. You're literally going by yourself into this new environment. So how's that been? How was it initially, actually? How was it initially?
To be honest, when I first went out there, when I was at West Ham, I used to live at Diggs.
Yeah.
So me being away from home wasn't so foreign. Yeah. Obviously, Diggs is different with obviously your boys and that you played with. Obviously, I'd played with them for years and years and years, so it was kind of like normal.
Yeah.
But going out to Slovenia it weren't different, but in a way it was, because I was isolated. I was by myself. There was no family. There was no friends. It was literally just me and football. And I think that kind of, in a way, that kind of helped, because it just allowed me to focus solely on football. There was no, obviously, distractions. There was nothing else. It was literally go train and come home, go train and come home, go to games and do that thing. Slovenia as a country is really nice, though. It's really nice. Where I was staying was like a small town, so it was fairly quiet, so there weren't a lot to do. So I'd go out now and again, just on my own, just like obviously exploring stuff. Yeah. But mainly my time, literally just training home. And it paid off really.
Is there like a temptation to kind of almost overtrain? And especially considering, the reason I ask that is especially considering your history with like your major injuries, when it's just sort of you on football and you know that you've made this big decision and you know you're going to give it everything and there's nothing to really distract you. Did you ever have a phase where it was kind of like, you know what, that's it, I've finished training, I'm going to max out another session, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that? And the reason I ask is because I know that between you and your brother, you're both really hard workers. And I know when you were back for quarantine, you were still like mashing like serious work. I saw what you put your brother through and I was like, right, okay, like you're really about it. But was that ever that temptation to keep pushing, and how did you manage that? Because again, one of the key things about football is you need to rest.
Yeah. I think the worst thing you can do is overtrain. I think the worst thing you can do is overtrain. But I think with my injuries throughout the years, I've kind of got to know my body a lot better than I used to. So obviously, like sometimes, you know, like you don't really think about it. You just go train, and then obviously you rest, you wake up in the morning and you feel like, can I train? All right, cool, I'm gonna go train. But for me, it was kind of just like listening to my body, picking out certain workouts that would help my body in certain ways. So obviously, a lot of my workouts now, they're very specific. So I'll do like a strength session, a strength and power session, and then I'll do like a speed and agility session in the gym, where it's just like, instead of like low weight and like a high amount of reps, I'll do like heavy weights and just obviously focus on like the speed and momentum of that exercise.
Yeah.
So obviously I won't be doing it with small weights. I'll be doing it with big weights where my body can get used to moving that quick with that heavy load. So when I'm moving on the pitch, when it's my body weight, my body's used to it. It's not like, because obviously you get to a point, your body gets tired, and if your body feels heavy, that's when you start to pick up these like little injuries and niggles. So I've definitely come a long way in terms of getting to know my body a bit better. So training for me is not really an issue these days per se.
No, nice. And we've mentioned how it was like at West Ham, we've mentioned how it was like in non-league. In terms of the standard of football in kind of Bosnia and Slovenia, how have you found that? Because a lot of people will look at it and be like, oh, it's Europe. But this is something I'm more as an advocate of. People see Europe as a step down, but I see it as you're kind of going like that. Essentially, if you look at loads of these leagues and look at the competitors and the players that come out of these leagues, it's not a step down, and you just need to watch some of these games. And of course, as you've witnessed, see some of these Champions League qualifiers where you see that there's a lot of talent coming out of these different pockets. So how did you find that when you initially got there?
To be honest, when I first went to Slovenia, to be fair, we had a very good team, which didn't take long to gel. Obviously, and we just missed out on getting promoted the first season I was there. We lost in the playoff. But no, I think in terms of like Europe, first divisions are definitely the way to go, kind of thing. Because, for instance, my team prior is like in this league, it's a low team. But obviously, over the last like 2-3 seasons, they made some very big transfers, and it just shows that like there's a lot of bigger leagues watching. In terms of Europe, this is like a lower league, but it's not, because obviously you've got like the Turkeys, the Belgians, and all those which are classed as like the higher leagues.
Yeah.
But they look at these leagues because obviously it's first division. They get to play in Europe, so they get to see how they are obviously outside of their league, which I think is a bonus for some boys. But yeah, because some of them obviously make big transfers. Like 2 of my teammates, not last season, one went to Olympiacos, one went to Trabzonspor, direct transfer. So there's definitely moves to be made. You just need to kind of just stick to it and express yourself. But there's definitely eyes on these leagues, and I think people don't realize that, because obviously you kind of hear Bosnia and you just think like it don't sound appealing, basically.
Yeah, and it's that whole thing about home comfort as well. I think a lot of players, it's changing now a bit, but a lot of players would prefer to kind of stay with what they know, and maybe, as we mentioned, a Bournemouth or something like that, and kind of FA Cup games, showcase yourself that way. Whereas on the flip side, you've had the opportunity to play Champions League. Like that, it's not really a bigger stage, club football wise. So no, it's credit to you and credit to the path you're on. One thing that I mentioned to your brother, me and him were randomly speaking, and he was like, don't worry, we're working on something. We know you've played international under 18s, but going forward, I know you said you want to come back to the UK. Is Nigeria something that's in the back of your mind about stuff you would like to do?
Yeah, definitely. We'll see. If it came up, I wouldn't say no. But it's one of them ones where, obviously, if you look at the squad now, a lot of the players are obviously playing in the top leagues around the country, around the world, and they're all first division. So, for instance, you know what I mean? So, what I need to kind of do is I need to put myself in a window where they'll look at me, look at the league, and be like, okay, he fares well in that league. He's doing really well. Let's give him a call up. Do you know what I mean? So, obviously, the higher I go up my ladder, hopefully along the way that can kind of happen.
No, for real. And you mentioned this season is about kind of taking you to another level.
Yeah.
And of course, you're with this team now. How have the first few games been? And what's it like being subject to a move like that? Because, like we mentioned, you joined the biggest team in the country. And I remember when I saw the video to announce it, I was like, this is big stuff. What does it feel being subject to that sort of move and the expectation that's upon your shoulders, essentially, because everyone knows what you can deliver and they're expecting you to deliver that again?
I mean, to be honest, the first few games, they've been all right. Could be a lot better. I think we've had 2 wins, 2 draws, I think. Yeah, 2 wins, 2 draws. I think there's definitely a lot more room for improvement in terms of the way we've approached the last few games. But in terms of like the expectations, my expectations are obviously bigger than what they expect of me. So theirs compared to mine aren't really the same. Whereas they're obviously looking at me like, oh, we want you to deliver. We expect to win the league, blah, blah, blah. But obviously where my ambitions and goals are a lot bigger than obviously just winning the league, I know that I have to put up, like I've got my targets for the season in terms of like goals, assists. So obviously I don't want to fall short of that. And that, me being able to accomplish those targets will definitely surpass what they expect of me. So that's the kind of pressure. I wouldn't say it's pressure, but that's the kind of thing
standard that you put to yourself. Yeah.
Like everywhere I've been, like it doesn't matter if it's second division, first division. I always have my targets for the season, and that I'm definitely going to try and hit that. Obviously, it's still early stages. We're only in the first month of the season.
Yeah.
So for me, not in any rush at the moment, because obviously where I'd missed, although I was training at home, I missed their pre-season.
Yeah.
So they're 5 or 6 games ahead of me, I think, in terms of match fitness.
Cool.
But still, I'm not far off at all. So I think once I get there, yeah, we'll definitely see some numbers.
How was that though? Because I mean, you mentioned at the beginning, whereas quarantine happened, you came here, you were training, but like you mentioned, their pre-season went on because obviously the way everything was handled everywhere was a bit different. And I've spoken to different people who've had similar situations to you, a bit different, where they came back whilst they were discussing moves. The moves would then happen, and it's like you're kind of a few weeks behind everyone else now, and it's not sort of let me settle in. You've just had to just jump in from straight. How has that been? And again, add on to the fact that everyone knows what you're capable of. Have you put extra pressure on yourself? And is this something that's just another thing of being a footballer for you?
I wouldn't say I'll put extra pressure on myself, because I mean, I'm not going to score X amount of goals within the first month. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not unrealistic where I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to come in, I'm going to score like 5 goals in 5 games and back late. And I think the main thing for me was just looking after my body, because obviously where I trained by myself at home is very different to training with a team and with a ball and games. Obviously, it's a lot of different movements. Your body's under a new type of stress. And the last thing you want to do is like go into a situation where they're obviously 3 or 4 weeks in and their bodies are used to it, and you're trying to obviously push yourself too hard. You get injured, you're out for like 6 months.
Long
and then
time.
Yeah. So for me, I think this month I've just been trying to look after myself. Obviously, I'm pushing myself, but I'm not pushing myself too hard. Just kind of doing the right things, and obviously so far it's worked out pretty well. So definitely within the next month, I'll definitely start to push on a lot more.
In terms of you coming back, I know that's something it's definitely something you want to happen, something that God willing it will happen. Has there been anyone for you that's done that journey already that you looked at and said, okay, you know what, that's sort of what I'm doing? Or are you essentially having to just forge your own path in this? Because that's another thing that's not really discussed as well. Like, again, now, because of what you've done, a lot of young players, because I mean, you're 26, a lot of young players look at players now, like Sancho going out to Germany saying, okay, I can do that. You went out to Europe a few years ago and people can look at that. But for you, are you just literally taking it as you come and forging your own path? Or are you looking at something in your head and saying, you know what, that's that path, I can do something similar?
I don't really look at anybody's path and think that's kind of what I want to do or be like, to be honest. You can't really, if you spend too much time trying to recreate somebody's path, you forget your own.
True.
Do you know what I mean?
Very true.
My path is kind of just to get back playing England. Obviously, I've got a level in my head where my Prem, Champ, that's obviously the standard that I want to play at. So however it comes about, obviously it's going to come about, whether it comes about now, whether it comes about in a year, like who knows. So for me, it's just basically going along the way and kind of ticking off boxes that I need to do along the way. So for instance, I think, so when I went to Slovenia first, it was kind of get your name back out there, because obviously you've been injured for a long time.
Yeah.
And then progress level. So obviously out there I scored 19 and 29 and then moved on to first division.
Yeah.
Moved on to a kind of low first division, and it was kind of like, okay, it's gonna be different. It might be a bit harder, but kind of try and do the same thing. I scored last season. It was five goals, 5 assists in 17 games, just before Corona got called up. And obviously, where it was, we were a low team and we were struggling during that time. It was kind of just like scoring against like the bigger teams and playing really well, and obviously catching the eye. And where I'm at a bigger team is kind of, you need to kind of replicate a certain amount of numbers, goals and assists, to catch the eye of whoever's watching. Do you know what I mean? And then obviously, if a transfer does come about, whether it might not be UK, it might be somewhere else, but that might be an easier route back to the UK rather than from Bosnia. Do you know what I mean? So it's definitely taking it step by step and just seeing what happens when the transfer windows open and that kind of thing.